welcome everyone. Well, Joe, you think you're just going to let me do the intro this time?
I thought you should one day, you know.
All right, well, welcome everyone. I am your co-host, Ryan Finch, Creative Technology Director here at Corporate Audiovisual Service, and joined with me, I guess I'll turn to my other left, we have President of Corporate AV, Joe Gilderson. Joe, how you doing?
Hi, Ryan. It's a pleasure to be here today. Thank you for taking the lead. And this is
No
really
problem,
good.
anytime. Yeah, there
Well,
you go.
sometimes you have to be thrown into the water to learn how to swim. So
Oh, fair.
looks like we're on episode 44 today. And I'm happy to say that we have an industry expert in the house to discuss how he feels things are going to be opening back up in the events community. Are we in person? Are we virtual? Are we combining the two? So we're going to let our expert provide some very timely insight as everyone's planning out their spring and fall productions. But before that, Ryan, maybe you can guide us through everything.
I guess I'll take this part again, my natural role, right? Well, good thing I have it rehearsed. You can find us every week, Wednesday, 1 p.m., and you can find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube Live. While you're there, drop us a comment. We'll bring you in. You'll be part of the show. And if you drop a like or a subscribe or a share, those things are very much appreciated. So show us some love. Helps us feel like we're doing this for a reason. And of course, we are going to be chopping this up into bite-sized pieces, which our friends in the video marketing side have told us is really smart to do. So we're going to keep doing that, and so we'll have some words of wisdom from this conversation and more posted on Facebook and on Instagram. A new channel for us, Joe.
Ooh.
Instagram. Okay, look at us.
Is that like the Snap Face?
It's Snap Face, InstaChat. Yeah. It's all those. Yeah, absolutely.
That's nice. That's good stuff. Good stuff. Well, look, we're happy to be here and ready to get started. So today we're going to be speaking with Scott Frankel. Scott is the president of Animatic Media, an industry leader in event production and sought-after speaker at industry events. Animatic is a full-service event production company founded with the idea of offering agency-style service without the agency price tag. Since 1996, Scott and his team have produced events for clients of all sizes, from Fortune 500 conferences with thousands of attendees to smaller roadshows and events. Scott's an innovator in the event technology space and insists on perfection and flawless execution for all of his events. In 2020, Animatic Media relaunched their on-demand web service as Conference on Demand Plus Live, a full-service virtual hybrid event platform for fully produced virtual events, and will soon be introducing an augmented reality offering built for the live events industry. Please welcome Scott Frankel.
Hey guys, thank you for having me.
Good to have you here. That was a good intro, Joe. I mean, I'm very excited to talk to Scott now.
I'm very excited to talk to me. Thank you. That was a great job.
Well, he is a sought-after speaker. Scott speaks all over the country. I've seen his face pop up at all sorts of industry events. So, where's your next time you're speaking, Scott?
Actually, I had to cancel one or two because business started pouring in, which is a great thing. Next time I'll be speaking will be at the Connect Marketplace Conference in Detroit in August. But I love it. I just love, meeting people in our industry and just sharing, what it is that I know and learn and hearing how other people are doing it. So I just love those times that I'm able to get that out there and meet people.
Well, that's great. Now, and Scott, I don't know if you share the same experience, but being the guys behind the scenes so often, we find even just doing the show that being in front of the scenes sometimes can help with balancing that perspective, right? And kind of knowing what our clients who are about to step on stage, what it kind of feels like. Do you get that sense sometimes?
Yeah, absolutely do. And as a matter of fact, all different perspectives, right? You sit in the back of the room watching all of these different keynotes and presenters. I feel like we should start a database of AV crew to rate speakers from our standpoint.
Well, that's a good idea. We're going to have to keep that one in mind.
I like that. So, I know that we're catching you and you're busy and you got a lot going on. Why don't you tell us about how you got started with the Animatic and how you got into the business just in general?
Oh, God. I feel like I've been doing this so long. It's almost hard to remember, but I had gotten a job, I don't even know, 28 years ago, probably, working for a company that was doing slides, 35 millimeter slides, if I could take you back. You two might be too young to actually have ever held a slide in your hand, whether you're in the industry or not. Um, and in doing that, multimedia had started, and PowerPoint could do slideshows, and laptops were just come out. And I had clients saying, "Hey, could you bring some people to change slides on site?" And it started with that and going on site. And hey, do you think could you help get some lights in here? And I didn't know anything about AV. And I went back to the company I worked for at the time, and they said, well, we'd be willing to offer those services, but we don't know how to do it. So I found myself, long story short, figuring it out myself, and long hours. And we started doing talent booking and video, and then that technology changed so much. So at one point, I had a client come to me and say, listen, why don't you just do this on your own? We'll give you all of our business. They are still a client of mine today, knock on wood.
That's great.
I do about a dozen events for them a year. And then obviously over 26 years, we've built a pretty nice portfolio of diverse clients, and haven't really looked back. So it's been a whirlwind for me, going from not knowing anything about this industry to being able to share some experience and expertise, and share some of our mistakes with people so they don't make them either.
Well, that's fair, and it's interesting that what we would otherwise consider a little bit of a scope creep, was kind of the beginnings of what became a successful career for you, right? It's like, and one more thing, and one more thing, and can you handle this, right? Well, sometimes that's that's the road that's set out in front of you. Now, the funny thing is, we had Jim Marlowe. I don't know if Scott, you've ever gotten the chance to work with from our team. You mentioned slide projectors. I mean, look, a little bit before my time for sure. He seemed to be really upset with slide projectors to the point where he actually threw one off of our balcony in kind of a like a ceremonious, like, I'm done with this. I mean, was that old technology frustrating at all? I'm sure it's far different.
Well, let me put it this way. So you'd have your slideshow with your classic, click click sound and
Right.
shuffling. And what made something multimedia back in the day is they created a dissolve unit, so the slide wouldn't literally just flash the screen and go to the next one. It could dissolve. That was multimedia, and inevitably, I don't care how detail oriented you were, if it was a sizable program, somebody put a slide in the wrong order. So you wanted to take it and throw it off the roof for sure.
The best laid plans, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty funny. Yeah, he kind of walked us through some of that, and the 3-gun projectors and the all night, meanwhile it's like 500 lumens bright.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, I have one for you. I'll just give you a real quick one. So I went from that company, and I got a job with, I'll leave the company name out. They're still in business, who had those LED panels that you would sit on an overhead projector. And then they came out with the first projector. It was portable. It was wider than my hands could fit on the screen. It was this tall. It weighed 26 pounds. Okay. It took a floppy disk in it. And they were trying to convince us that we could go out and we could sell those to executives to lug on a plane, put over their shoulder, and lug on a plane.
How did that go?
Well, company's still in business doing LED projectors.
True.
But it was an interesting time. A lot of transitions back then.
no, that makes sense. Well, now here it is, many years later, and Animatic's done fantastic and worked on really great projects. Why don't you give us a sense of the types of work and the types of projects that you're typically on, and kind of what your role is in the production normally?
Okay, sure. So our typical client is a corporate or association client. That's our bread and butter. We do a lot of conferences where there's, general session room, concurrent rooms, several breakouts. And we handle, the production, not just overseeing the AV and partnering with companies like you guys, but um, doing content creation. And, the thing that I really pride ourselves on, aside from the flawless execution, as you mentioned in my intro, is being creative. And we do some creative content. We think of every moment, every experience that the attendees have, from the moment those doors open with music and what they're seeing on the screens, transitions between sessions. So, that's our bread and butter. Um, and then obviously, a lot of people, I won't use the P word that happened during COVID, the height, but we changed and we built our virtual event platform um, where we were very fortunate. So we had conference on demand in place already, which was a video repository for video that we would record, a slide record on site. And we had that as a portal that we customized for every client. So when COVID hit, we quickly updated that to be able to do things like registration, chat features, all of those things you need to do to have a full blown platform. And that ironically enhanced our client base because we were doing some things that we had never done before, galas and so on, and fundraisers that still needed to find a home to do them in. So those are our typical clients: is corporate and association, conferences and events.
Interesting. Well, and I don't know how much, Scott, about our history but we definitely have some similarities as far as the corporate. We slant more on the nonprofit side, and then healthcare kind of being an interesting mix of the two. But so we've certainly seen the the difference between working with a corporate group versus working with an association, right? Can you speak at all to that? Like, how do you approach dealing with different clients? Are there different processes, or is it kind of the same thing tailored to a different group?
Definitely different. Definitely different. We find that we have our association clients are definitely on more stringent budgets. There's more committees to pass everything through. And what we generally try to do with the association clients is we try to give them as much bang for the buck as they can get, and we try to get creative with how we use the technology. We'll really dig in deep when they give us an agenda and RFP. We'll get them on the phone for an in-depth phone call to see if they're making the best use of their rooms, especially when it comes to AV. Maybe they could push this into that room and so on, resource labor. And what we say here internally when we have our team meetings with an association client, especially a new one, is that we start where they are and we take them to where we think they should be. And I don't necessarily mean monetarily. I just mean, they've got no backdrop right up on the stage. Listen, I could give you a backdrop for $1,500, right? We could give you voice of gods to introduce your executives and your keynotes. Doesn't have to cost a lot of money. Right. Where the corporate clients are somewhat more used to, the process of the higher cost factor.
Fair. Okay. So, I mean, that's certainly, that's certainly something we could echo as far as how do you get cost efficient. We do have a question that just came in from the audience here. Is there anything about this industry that still surprises you after all these years in the business?
Well, that you go through 4 perfect rehearsals and 2 minutes before doors open, something goes wrong. And it always seems to work out when the doors open anyway. What surprises me? What surprises me, I think, is that there's so many people that have been doing things the same way for so long that always come to us. They challenge us. Can we do something? We have a lot of repetitive events.
Sure. Yeah.
And that will come up with 10 different ideas for how they could do a better event next year. And it ends up with the same thing: blue background and PowerPoint, same pipe and drape, and not because they don't want to spend money, but it surprises me that people aren't more willing to take a risk, a little bit, a safe risk, a calculated risk.
Yeah, we've definitely seen a lot of that in the past too. There's a lot of brainstorming. And then it comes down to, but that's going to cost more. Yeah, that it might cost more. Yeah. But, well, why don't we just do the same thing as before? I'm like, really? We
Yeah,
really shouldn't do the same thing as before. Why are we doing that? But
right.
it's comfort. There's a lot of things, You're right
Yeah,
about the corporate side is different. We see that a little more in the nonprofits, which I think is fairly similar to the associations, maybe in the decision making kind of process. And
yeah,
they're a little less resistant or more resistant to change, depending on the scale of the event to begin with. Because then others are the exact opposite extreme, and they need to blow the doors off the thing.
yeah.
You just got to know who you're talking to. I think that's the bottom line. But
That's a big. You know what surprises me too, just to throw this out, is that especially on new clients, is how many, and I'm not looking to bash anybody. Everybody's got a different level of experience and attention to detail. How often I'll receive an RFP, which literally gives me 10% of all the information I need to know to give them a true quote without just giving them a proposal and them finding out that they're 70% over budget after the fact because they didn't give me all the information I need. So I kind of force those query conversations
Right.
before I'll even do a quote. But that still surprises me. This is not, I don't even have an agenda. How can I don't know what hours I need. Do you have overtime?
Right.
Do you have a gala at night at awards? And are we into overtime? Things like that.
It's like, you want me to make up a number? Sure, I'll do
Yeah, sure. No
that.
problem.
Yeah, no, we've seen obviously a fair amount of that, and we always joke around too that there's never a budget until there's a budget.
Yeah.
well, it's funny, Scott. We had something happen just a short period of time ago that it was almost like, to take a baseball reference, like it was batting out of order. Like they came to us with something that honestly should have gone to you 3 months earlier. And so by the time they came to us, we're like, there's so much that still has to be figured out here. They're just saying, here's a number, but it doesn't make any sense. Like nothing makes any sense because we
Right.
don't actually have direction yet. And
Yeah.
that's kind of where I see, someone like yourself and your team working with, groups like us, because you need direction and you got to think it through prior to, the hands-on and logistics. And
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And the equipment list and labor hours is only a portion of the puzzle, right? If they share last year's quote with you, with the prices blinded out, that doesn't give me, when do you get the room, all of those. You have rehearsals that we haven't talked about, and so on. So it's a never-ending challenge sometimes.
right.
But we found that some of our long-standing clients, we've taught them, and we feel really good about that. And that they could give us quotes that are thorough, exactly what we need, and we know that we don't have to get them on an inquisition call for an hour just to go through it.
That's great. It's just funny how it works. A lot of times we can tell more from seeing a picture than we can from
Right.
seeing the equipment list, to be
Yeah,
honest. I'm
yeah,
like, I don't know how does this interact either? Show me a picture. I'm like, okay, I have
Okay.
a good idea of what's going on.
Right.
right.
Not
Oh,
perfect, but at least the right
exactly.
direction.
So you didn't request cameras, but I clearly see IMAG. That's not a video there. So how did that work?
Yeah. Well, and there's, different perceptions of what scale is, right? Especially if it's a group you're starting out with, sometimes they go big, and I mean big, and then there's pipe and drape, and you're like, okay, that's, that's big to you. Now I get it. A photo will tell me that. And
Yeah.
then, big could mean, the types of projects I'm sure you're familiar with. So yeah, obviously a photo is worth 1,000 words and maybe several RFPs at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. All true.
Very good. Well, most of our show, we talk about technology. Of course, we do dabble in other areas as well, but technology is the fun part for us. Now, you pretty much get involved in all of the elements, is my understanding. Did you prefer one thing over the other? Do you prefer video over sound and lighting? Do you prefer the staging dynamic? And I don't know.
Yeah.
What's the most fun for you?
Most fun for me is definitely the video and the staging. You know, we fortunately, as I mentioned, we've got a lot of repetitive clients, which puts us into the Houdini syndrome, right? Where we always have to outdo ourselves each year. Did the budget change? No, the budget didn't change, but we want you to come up with something bigger or better or different. So I I like the idea of being able to come up with something using technology a lot of times to do something different that it was intended to use. Or before the before video walls were out, right? And we would actually take we would take the content, we'd bring it into something like After Effects, and we would put grid lines on it to make it look like a 27 cube video wall. And then we'd put two lines up to split it into three. And then we take the lines down in the content so it's one giant single screen, widescreen projector or something. I really
It's
enjoy
pretty
getting into
cool.
that stuff of what can we do. We're working on a keynote concept. It's again, when most of our clients are not Fortune 50, right? We've done our share of work for clients like that. So that your average corporation that's trying to give that big event feel. So we're now working on a keynote for a client of ours where they're going to have a big screen behind them, big video wall, and they're going to seemingly interact with it. So literally, instead of pinches like you do on your phone, they're going to stand there and they're going to take their hand and they're going to go like that and expand a video window. They're going to tap a play button. The screen's 15 feet behind them, 20 feet behind them, but it's all a bunch of video cues. It's very safe to do if it's scripted. So I love getting into those things. Um, that's really what I enjoy about this industry.
Sure. Well, and that's that creativity you talked about, right? It's taking these things that, exist to some extent already and putting them together in different ways. And, obviously adding in a bit of choreography, that sounds really cool. I would love to see that come together. And this is actually, I guess where this brings me. Do you have, or is there, can you speak to that balance, I guess, between pushing the envelope, pushing the boundaries? This isn't something that feels safe and like we've done it 100 times, and we're technical minded, and I need to make sure this is going to work. How do you navigate that balance?
So I've lost a lot of sleep and hair over those things because I'm not going to kid you. We've done that where there are calculated risks. And quite frankly, we sometimes explain that to the clients. Here's what we're thinking of doing. But we've done shows that are all video, all the content's video, everything. There's no PowerPoint in it at all. But we'll have a PowerPoint backup that if we have to put that in or something's not working. But I think if you're not pushing the envelope, you're not doing justice to yourself, to your staff, to your client, to try to come up with a unique experience, because that's what we're looking for. We're looking to have the attendees, when they walk out of that keynote room, for instance, they may not be sure why they feel a certain way or that they feel like they just experienced something. And I don't want to get into whole experiential, that's not our gig. But in kind with that we're trying to create something that just feels a little bit different, and we always try to have a safety net there, but we definitely sometimes take some risks.
Oh, absolutely. And how about, and this is something I know we kind of joked about backstage quickly, but, how about the role of the person on stage, right? Because a lot of the time that's kind of decided for us. It maybe not an entertainer, maybe that's somewhere where you can, pick the right person. But when it's a corporate group, a CEO, a CFO, do you have to balance out the aptitude or the capability level of those individuals before you come up with these ideas?
Yeah, absolutely. Like we were actually looking for the right client and the right person for that interactive choreographed project that we're working on now that I mentioned. 100%. We will not
Yeah.
take a risk on just anybody with that.
Well, it's interesting that the idea preceded the client in that case.
It did. It did. We were looking. We came up with it. We like that would just be kind of cool. And again, without breaking the bank budget wise here, it's the same presentation. It's just presented a different way.
Very cool. Very cool. I was looking through and just seeing some of the different sets and scenes you guys have set up, and I mean, there's some really great work.
That's video map in there on those two those scenic tiles there.
Oh wow,
Looks
really?
great.
Those were glowing. Those were just basically scenic tiles on the flanking the center screen there. And we actually had the scenic tiles shipped to our office, and we set up a quadrant of about an 8x8 area, testing it with our own projectors here to make sure that conceptually it would work.
Right.
And sometimes we actually put full video on those screens of what I call eye candy. So it's not slides, it's just extra stuff to look good, but we projected actual video images on those, as well as those actually traced all around.
Wow. It looks great. It really looked great.
Thank you.
And that's what it's all about. That's you're applying the right ideas to the right client, and I think that's pretty smart. One of the things I had heard way in the back, like we had done a big presentation in the corporate group, and I was with someone who was producing the videos. We came in with a big plan. There's a whole thing. It was a big national sales meeting. We came with the plan based on what the other 16 people had just told us. The one person walked in the room, said, "No, we want so-and-so to be funny." And you should have seen the videographer, like his face went blank. He goes, it's kind of hard to replicate. Are they funny?
Right.
Yeah, right.
And it turns out they were not funny.
Big surprise there.
But they weren't really matching it up. It was just an idea, and they didn't consider the elements, right?
Yeah.
All of the pieces that make it funny.
Right. Right. Hire fun. I love this. So I'll never forget. We had hired, I think Ray Romano or Kevin James. I don't remember which. I know it's one of those two guys. And I'm introducing them. We had some pre-calls and all of that. They're going to come on after an award show. They're going to do a 45-minute set. And on site, they were meeting. I met with my client, and my client's there trying to feed him jokes. Like, I had to pull him away. I said, it was Ray Romano. I said, "Ray, listen, whatever they told you, just do whatever you were going to do anyway. Don't listen."
You should be telling them the jokes. Come on, let's be serious.
Yeah, you figure it out. Or Jeff Foxworthy on the pre-calls. Jeff, listen, this is a technology audience. They're really smart, blah, blah, blah. Don't do any of your how you might be a redneck jokes.
Right.
And he said, "Is it okay if I fire off a bunch of them at the end?" So needless to say, he did 45 minutes. The last 10 minutes were the funniest part of it.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, talk about like taking away something that makes someone special to begin with, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Again, not the right idea for the people involved, for sure.
Yep.
Man. No, you see a lot, and you travel all around the country, so you see things a little bit differently, which I think brings a different perspective to as we're looking at how things are opening up. What are you and your clients seeing, and is it based by region, or like, are they in person? Are they online? Like, what do you see happening right now?
So we came back, I would say, for in-person events last August, very cautiously, very state specific, based on the restrictions and mandates and so on. And we came back pretty strong at the end of last year. Last fall was pretty busy, and now it's off the charts. I mean, we've already done a couple of events. I leave on Sunday, and I'm traveling every week until the third week in May, except for 1 week. We're very busy, which is great. But I think, from a COVID standpoint, just to say the C word and get it out of the way, people aren't so concerned anymore. They're cautious, but we are still doing, we're mixing in hybrid. Our clients, whether they come to me for it or I recommend to them, that doing a hybrid event is like doing two events. It needs to be planned separately. It's not just picking a video camera. And I say, if you're doing, what does hybrid mean? If you ask 100 meeting and event professionals, what does virtual or hybrid mean? You're going to get 80 different answers. Because are you bringing the speaker in as a virtual? Are you streaming out to a virtual audience? Both. So we're doing both. We're doing probably, I would say, 25% of the events that we're doing this spring, are going to be hybrid. But if you plan for it, it also doesn't have to cost a whole lot of money. It could be a modified agenda, so to speak, for what's going to be hybrid, or even on demand for that matter, post event. But most of the stuff we're doing is live.
Great. Well, and that, you touched on on an interesting point there, because it's something we've talked about a lot on the show, is the hybrid events and how it's not exactly a one size fits all. And your point, it means different things to different event professionals. That's absolutely true. I can't tell you how many times I've had somebody go, "Can you just add on hybrid to this? Just like add that on." And it's like, well, there is a conversation here, right? That is really going to have to happen before that is anything but like an RFP, like words on a page. Just a number and words on a page. It doesn't mean anything. Yeah. But no, I'm curious specifically with regards to traveling, and maybe this might be tough to answer just yet. But I know at least some of the first projects that we were seeing come back at any kind of scale were outside of the our home New York market. Are you seeing any differences, region to region, anything yet that you can speak of? Oh, looks like he might be frozen.
Yeah, well, we'll give him a second to come back.
I'm going to put him in the spotlight. Maybe not. We'll give him a second. We'll take him off screen for a second, and when he comes back in, we'll bring him back on.
Well, listen, Ryan, I'm going to tell you a little bit about a hybrid experience we had last week, if you want.
I would love that. Absolutely.
Well, thank you. Let me tell you a little bit about it.
Hold on. I got to spotlight you here.
Spotlight it here. So we actually we don't really do a lot of religious events, but we had an event for a group of friars. And it was a full week conference. We did have remote people dialing in at one point. And then Friday, we actually streamed it out. That was live. But, then there's other elements where it was an on-demand type of thing, just like Scott was referring to. So it is really interesting, but there was a really good crowd. At one point, we had a concert with Amy Grant, and there was roughly 700 people. And it was a really good experience all around. But, that was an example of a hybrid that maybe wasn't designed to be in that facility. So we had to bring in internet. We had to bring in capabilities of streaming and for bringing in our remote panelists. And, so there was a number of different things that we had to bring in just for that. And of course our happy team. But I see that Scott's back here, so yep. We'll bring him back in.
All right, and here he is.
Oh, sorry guys, the good old computer, old-fashioned blue screen that's come back in 2022.
Oh no! Oh man, well that's unfortunate. Fortunately, you had a backup plan. There it is.
So I'm on my phone now, as you can see. So I apologize for that, but yeah, here's my backup plan.
All good. Go ahead, Scott. I'm sorry.
Well, you had started to ask me about, I think, traveling.
Yeah. So as far as the different markets are concerned, one of the first things that we saw as the scale was coming back in these projects that are coming in were that a lot of them were not in the New York market. And so we started to think, well, it might be that, say a market like New York that was hit particularly hard might have a little bit more time before it's quote unquote back. Are you seeing any differences, any trends as far as which markets are more active or, anything like that from a regional standpoint?
I mean, we're not. I'm actually, ironically, us as a company, the smallest percent of events we do are in the local New York market where we're based, where you guys are. So we're still doing, we're going all over. I mean, we're going to San Diego, we're going to Cincinnati, we're going to Dallas. There is a lot in Texas because Texas has been, open a lot more. Going to Florida next week and Austin. So I haven't really seen any difference from where we were before things, had shut down.
Yeah, it's funny because our mix has been slightly different, being just in the tri-state, New York, Connecticut, New Jersey area. because otherwise it's a little more project based, but our every day is really in the tri-state. So we, I think we spoke about this before. We went from pretty much everything in person to everything streaming to then for a period of time for 4 months or so, then back everybody jumped right back to in person, and including the event that we worked on together, and which was so nice to have those people in a big ballroom. That was fantastic. And then meanwhile, it shut down completely like 2.5 weeks later.
Right.
And now if it's, I think 50% a light number of hybrid for us right now. It seems like every single thing we're doing has something. But as you mentioned, it like defining what that hybrid experience is a pretty big deal, because not one of them has been the same, really. They're all
No.
slightly different.
Yeah, they're all slightly different. And, we've got some clients who are perfect candidates for a hybrid event, but their audience is, sometimes it's a medical, and it's an elderly clientele audience. So they won't go hybrid just for that reason.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, look, that makes sense. The funny thing also, as far as
Oh, I'm sorry. I got my computer back. Can you switch me off?
I can indeed. Give me 1 second. Let's see. Scott, can you still hear us?
Yes.
All
Can you
right.
hear me?
I can hear you.
Just 1 second. Let me see if I can switch my camera.
Sure.
I apologize for all these technical.
No worries. We are, in fact, doing it live. These are the things that happen. Actually, you're not even the first person that this has happened to in this show, so fear not. Oh, I see your face on your phone. Here, let me. I'll bring that one back in.
My camera doesn't want to come back alive. So
That's okay.
Listen, this is live events, right?
It certainly is. It certainly is. And we have backup plans, right? We have multiple devices, and
That's it.
all good. All good. So, I guess as far as where we go from here, right? Are there any tips, any recommendations for things that, whether your clients or anybody who might be listening to this, whether live or sometime in the future, anything that they can do to best prepare for the upcoming season, whether it's spring, fall, any tips, recommendations?
Well, yes. I mean, plan ahead way more than you used to, because, we've had a situation where it's a different world. There's some people who juggled around, some good people who left the industry just for whatever reason, and booking your technology and your production staff and your AV early to make sure you've got not just a crew, a warm body, but people that you can trust and rely on to do what they need to do. I also think, unfortunately, I'll say it's painful to hear, plan on spending more money. I think things are going to definitely cost more down the road. Things are different on the other side of this pandemic. And I think that it's all looking really good. If you're in the industry, you're in a good place. It's going to get, back and stronger. I'm very positive about the future. But as far as on the meeting planner side, event planner, start early, don't wait, lock up your staff, plan on, bumping up your budget, probably 15%, maybe even more now that what's going on with fuel prices, but that's just a small part of it. And, I think, remember this, there's very few unicorn events out there, right? Everyone wants that unicorn event that's easy to produce, that's, going to come in under budget, that is going to wow everybody. So there's always going to be some bumps in the road. Every now and then you'll catch that unicorn, but just plan on starting early, really.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. I mean, I know from the logistical side, we've seen challenges in pretty much every area. So from the obvious fuel things, which are, I think, smaller in comparison to the others for us, but actual trucking is very difficult at this point. There's just not enough. The demand is over, is over the supply, we'll say. Certainly the staff is, a lot of people just had to get out of the hospitality and technical fields just due to the long layoffs. And electronics, like to try to get new equipment right now is very difficult. It's just long lead times. They still haven't worked out, the just-in-time model to now we need stuff again. That just hasn't gotten figured out yet. So I know I agree with you completely. Planning ahead, locking in your team that you really want. I think that's very good advice.
Yeah.
Ryan, anything you'd like to add into us here, and as we start to wrap up our conversation with Scott?
Well, Scott, you touched on locking things in early. I think where we've seen that most is specifically in the staffing side. And I don't know if this has been the case for you as far as, when you go around and you work with different groups, different production partners in different regions, is looking for those people who, are the leads and the tech leads, especially we just came from doing an event in South by Southwest, and it's like, you better lock that stuff in early because otherwise you're going to end up with nothing, and not to say you might not have a warm body like you said, but the right person for the right role can be pretty hard to find.
Yeah, it's super important. And one other thing I just didn't want to forget to talk about too is, it's interesting because things are going to cost more, is that, I mentioned how we started the Conference on Demand plus Live platform with the Conference on Demand, with the slide recording and all of those things. I'm encouraging people to come back to that to a certain extent because you're spending all this time and money anyway to put on this conference. As you guys know, it does not have to break the budget to throw a device on there to slide record and have that content for the future, right? To have it, whether it's for archiving purposes or whether it's to put up post-event on a site somewhere. I think it's all very important. So I'm encouraging people to spend a little more money to do the slide recording and have that content, because if it's valuable for, let's say, 300 people, 800 people, 1,000 people on an in-person event, there's got to be an audience outside that it's valuable for as well.
Well, that's actually a really good point, Scott. We've had a number of discussions on this show about the importance of video marketing and how that's changed very recently. A lot of groups that weren't really doing a lot of video are now really, it was the only game in town basically for 2 years or so. And of course, the live video has a place in all that. But to your point about, give yourself the advantage later on down the road that they may want to churn out some pieces that they weren't necessarily setting out to produce when we captured it, right? So that's actually a really good point that I honestly I hadn't considered before. Is just making sure that you have what you might need later on. So all good stuff there.
Excellent.
Well, fantastic. Listen, Scott, I know you're probably going to jump on a plane or go someplace. I mean, you're going everywhere. But
I'll be somewhere.
We don't want to take up too much more of your time. So we really appreciate you being on today. Thank you very much. Your insight is greatly appreciated because I think you bring a really fresh perspective to all sides of it because you see it from many different angles. So thank you for being here today.
Well, thank you for having me anytime. And I apologize for the little technical hiccup there, but I really appreciate you having me, and you guys do a great job with this stuff. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks, Scott. And we'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, Scott. And Mr. Finch, for everybody out there, you guys can find Animatic Media at animatic.com. If you want to learn a little bit more about the Conference on Demand plus Live, conferenceondemand.net. So make sure you check everything out with Scott and his team at Animatic because they're true professionals. He's got great ideas. I really loved what he was talking about on focusing on what kind of that audience experience is, the music, the transitions from one section to another. Those are things a lot of groups do not pay much attention to be honest. Right. So I think it's nice to have a team like Animatic Media there to actually pay attention to that. and come up with great ways to maximize your budgets and really deliver a good program.
Absolutely.
But Mr. Finch, you know what
Yeah,
to do.
I know what to do.
Let's
Well,
get us there.
okay, well, as it was just a little while ago, a Wednesday at 1 p.m. Try again next week, Wednesday, 1 p.m. We will be here again on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on YouTube Live, all of the above. And while you're there, if you want to drop us a comment, we can bring you in. You can be part of the show. We'll answer your question just like Marissa earlier. And then while you're there, you have no excuse not to drop a like, a love, as someone did a little while ago up in the corner. I can see it there. A like, a love, a laughy face, an angry face. Let us know. Any sort of, letting us know that you're out there watching is much appreciated. And of course, again, Wednesday, 1 o'clock. Am I missing anything, Joe? I think I'm missing something. I'm forgetting something.
Let's not forget about
that's
Instagram.
The new part. I don't have it down yet. We're now on Instagram. We got the chunks. We got the bite-sized pieces. Come on back, and I'm sure you'll see something later in this week, recapping some of the conversation that we had here today with Scott, and we're going to be doing that each and every week. So, Joe, I think that's it, man.
That's all I got. It's time for us to go. Thank you, everyone. We will see you next Wednesday.
Sounds good. Bye now.